Hi, this is Carrie Schell from On Point Quilter. Welcome to the last block in my F is for Fall series. This one is entitled L is for Lantern, and it took a little work to come up with a word that worked with the pumpkin, but one of my friends reminded me that many pumpkins turn into jack-o'-lanterns on Halloween. So I'm going to go to the Stitching tab, and for this one, I was going to just do a new design, but I'm actually going to build off an old one. So I'm going to view my sketchbook. I'm going to go to the Stitching tab. I'm going to find the L is for Luscious, and I'm going to edit that. And the main reason I wanted to do that is I wanted to just take and start with that L. Now I can copy that over to another Stitching tab, or everything is saved, so I'm just going to get rid of the pieces that I don't need, and I'm just going to use the pick tool. I'll draw a block around the apple and I will delete it. And now I am going to go to the Tracing Image tab. Now I'd already brought this in, so I'm going to go ahead and just delete the image so you can see that process as well. And I'm going to select Import Image, and I am going to navigate to where I saved my pumpkin. And this was just a picture I found on the internet. So I'm going to select that and select OK, and then click on the space to fill. And I'm going to go to the Artwork tab, and my L is sort of covering my pumpkin. So I'm going to go ahead and just move that out of the way for now. And I'm going to use the Bezier tool, and I am going to trace the pumpkin. And the curves aren't working quite right, but I think that's okay. When I did this the first time, the ending node and the beginning node didn't connect up. If you are having that problem, is to go to the more drawing board options and go to the artwork options. And this one, I had auto join when drawing clicked on. Sometimes I still won't connect up those start and stops. It's also useful for something like that to turn on the snap to node of drawing. And so a lot of times I'll do that if I'm having problems getting things to connect up. So I'm going to click OK, but again I do have my shape, and now it's all about using the shape tool to basically adjust the shape. Now if I click on, let's say, a curve, notice that the nodes or the handles for both sides of the curve are engaged, and so I can select those and I can trace the image, and I can do the same there. Now I'm going to scroll down a bit so I can see both of the handles. I like that, but I'm going to take a look at it in the Stitch tab to see what it looks like. And, you know, okay, but that's got a little bit of a sharper point than I like there. So I'm going to go ahead and select this, and I could try changing that to a smooth node. So let me do that. Which usually makes some of those node points a little smoother, which it did, so I like that. And so then back to the Artwork tab, and I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to trace the stem. The Stitch tab and see, did it fill in? Yep, that means it filled in. I can also click on a node and it notes that that's the middle node in a closed curve. So we definitely want closed curves for doing fill stitches in the embroidery. So let me clean up this as well. I think I need an extra node there, so if I double click on a segment, it will add a node. I'm going to make that a smooth node. Yuck, yuck, yuck. So Control Z to disengage that, because the one I want is this one there. So let me just zoom in so I can see that a little bit better. And there's the handle that I care about and the node that I care about. So I'm just going to move that into the base a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to click on the hide show image for tracing. So I can see that needs to be a little bit smoother. So now let's go to the Stitch tab and see what it looks like there. That looks pretty good. So back to artwork, I am going to zoom out. And for this one, I wanted to fill the lower left quadrant. So I'm going to use the pick tool, select everything, and I'm going to right click, resize, and I think I'm going to do 70% for both the horizontal and vertical. And I'm going to bring that in place and move the L over. And then I decided, you know what, I would like some texture lines in my pumpkin as well. So back to the Bezier tool. And I'm going to draw that. Use the shape tool. And you'll find that the more you use that shape tool, the more comfortable you get in using that drawing feature within Electric Quilt. Okay, so let's go to the Stitch tab. And I like that, but then I thought, well, first of all, that stem needs to go further down. I think I would like those texture lines to go underneath the edge stitch going around the pumpkin. So I have a little bit more work that I need to do, because in order to separate that edge stitch from the fill stitch on the pumpkin, I need to make that actually two different shapes. So I'm going to go back to the artwork tab, use my pick tool, take that first one, and I am going to go ahead and clone it. And that's going to put it on top. I'm going to just move that out of the way so I can still work with it. And while I'm here, I'm going to take the stem and I am going to click on send to back. So that is at the bottom. So now I'm going to go and I'm going to play with some of my stitching. So let's start with on the fill stitch. So I know that on this one here, I want that fill to not be there, right? So I'm going to click on no fill, click on that pumpkin outline. And for the pumpkin that is going to go at the bottom, I don't want the edge stitch. So I'm going to click on the set edge stitch. I'm going to click on the no edge stitch, and I'm going to click on that, and now that edge stitch disappears. So if I want to make any changes to this, best time to do it is before I move that back in place, because even though we can't see that, it will allow us to not necessarily get access to the stuff underneath. So while I am here on my I'm going to have the set edge stitch. I'm going to make this a little bit narrower. So I'm going to make that a 2.5, and I'm going to go ahead. And you know what? It was on the no edge stitch. Let me move that back to the steel stitch. And I have to touch it, and I'm not finding it to touch. So I'm going to do some Control Z's, and I think I need to do a few of them to get rid of that. Oh, got rid of few too many. So first at the no edge stitch, I'm going to click on that. And then I'm going to click on the steel stitch, and I'm going to change that to, let's say 2, and I'm going to click on those 2 texture stitches. Now I think I want to change my fill stitch for the pumpkin. I'm sort of enamored with this embroidery type of stitch here, or this corduroy type of stitch, so I'm going to put that in place, because again I think it sort of follows some of those texture lines. And now I am going to go ahead and use my set thread tool, and I think for the pumpkin I'll use a lighter orange for the stitches around the pumpkin, the darker orange, a green stitch for the stem. Oh, that's a little bit too bright, so let's try something a little darker there. And then maybe I'll just change out the L so to be a little bit different as well. I'm going to go back to artwork, use the pick tool. I'm going to move that in place. And now let me go back to my stitch tab, and I think I like that. So now I do want to check out my order. So I'm going to click on the move up down. It's doing the pumpkin pieces all in order, which is what I like. And then move the slider bar here, and it's going to start with the stem, the L. I think that looks good. So I'm going to simulate my sewing on it to see what it looks like, and I'll play that forward. Once I've completed that, I can go ahead and add it to my sketchbook. And the other thing I'm going to do is go to the stitching tab, and I am going to export my stitching file. And I'm going to call this L is for Lantern 3, since I've done this once or twice. And I'm going to save as the type of PES, because that is the format my embroidery machine uses, and I'll select Save. It says I can reduce thread changes by sorting colors. I'm going to go ahead and say yes to that. And it says my file has been written successfully. Now I'm going to go back to my earlier version of the quilt. So I want to work on my quilt, and for this one I want to go ahead and add the other shapes. So I'm going to add the apple, and I am on layer 3, and I'm on set embellishment. And so my acorn and my pumpkin. And I'm going to zoom in and use my adjust tool to clean up the placement on all of these blocks. And now I am off to the quilt shop to find some fabrics to finish this quilt. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this series of using electric quilt stitch. I know I've learned more about the software by working through the videos, and I hope you've done the same. If you'd like to subscribe to my weekly newsletter, it's at www.onpointquilter.com.